Let's take this piece of wonder tech for a whirl.
See it right there. Beating. Hear it?
Ryan McCaffrey with IGN. I'm joined by Miranda Sanchez. Miranda, we've both just played a 4-hour session of Cyberpunk 2077. The wait is over. We've both played, and turns out our sessions were, sure, they overlapped in some ways, but pretty darn different in a number of others, just showing how big and deep this game is. I want to start with you. Just what was your biggest takeaway on what it's like to finally play this game?
There's so much. There is so much to do. That was like really what I wanted to dig into, was how much of this world can we actually explore? Like leading up to this, we saw these really impressive looking demos of like all these people filling these streets and all these big skyscrapers. It's like, okay, that's cool. But how much can we actually explore of that? Because I feel like whenever we get into these big open world sort of city environments, so much of it are just these big blocks of buildings and you can't actually go into a lot of them. But Cyberpunk is just like, you want to go in that alley? That's an alley. And there's someone you can go murder back there for money if you'd like. It's like, oh, okay. So I definitely tried to spend a lot of my time digging into that, which is actually kind of hard because we started from the beginning, which meant we started at low levels. And Cyberpunk isn't necessarily meant for you to go and take on someone who's double your level, which I found out painfully.
Yeah, I sort of applied that. I stuck to quests. I'm obsessed. Like, I don't like it when I have a lot of quests on my quest log, so I'm always wanting to check them off and get rid of them. But in the first 4 hours, I always probably had 5 quests at a given time, maybe 1 or 2 main quests and 3 to 5 secondary quests, side quests. And what I noticed is those like onion-like layers that you're talking about to the world itself apply to the quests as well. So ultimately my objective was to get this thing called the Relic. It's a prototype biochip. I won't explain it now, but to even get that, I needed to get this awesome high-end military-grade spider bot drone, like attack drone robot. And I spent basically the entire time trying to do that through build-up quests and little side quests that tied into that. But what was cool was, as I'm sure you noticed as well, you are given so many choices within that where, well, do you want to align with this person? Do you then want to maybe align with that person but betray them later? Do you want to instead maybe go over here and do this? Like, there are all sorts of paths within those quest structures that I think I'm going to just be digging into with fervor and having a great time with in the final game.
One thing I did seem to like about that is whenever I approach a situation, it didn't seem like there was a good or bad option. It's just these are just character options as far as how your V choose to present themselves to this person. And so I kind of like that. It's not trying to like judge you for like how you choose to play this game, because at the end of the day, I think this game is trying to play with that gray area, right? It's like, who is really right here? Maybe nobody. And you were finding yourself in that, and like you're a hired gun, right? So it's like, this is your mission, and we don't really know how that's going to play out, because really we didn't get to see that much of the story. Like, we didn't even see Johnny Silverhand, which obviously Keanu Reeves' character is supposed to be a big part of this, and I only heard him mentioned on the radio. That's it. But that was something, which is cool.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, you pointed out the exploration stuff. I couldn't believe how much depth there seems to be. Like, the world building in this game, I'm not sure if I've quite ever seen anything like it in a long, long time. I mean, even large open world RPGs, like the fantasy RPGs, you tend to have like a town here, a town there. This is such a dense space that it's like, it's clear what CD Projekt Red has spent the last 5 years doing.
Yep. I think I was really surprised to see, just speaking to that density, that we were only in 1 of 6 districts. And I also got to see the surrounding area outside of Night City because of the path I chose. So just quick side note, there are 3 background identities you choose for your character. or 3. You get to choose one of the 3. And one of them, the Nomad Path, actually starts you outside of Night City, which is really cool because you get to see what's outside, which is just a desert and a very, very, very small town. But it was cool to get the perspective of like what something looks like outside of there. And I'm sure you'll get to go there even if you don't choose that path at some point. But it is really interesting to see just like how much that depth goes into. So far as collectibles go, I did find these like little items that essentially are just different data logs. So it could be a passage from a history book or a newspaper clipping or a short story just from that world. So like there's a lot of things you can collect and read. But then also just talking to people. There are a lot of NPCs you can just talk to. And they'll just like spout out a variety of lines. And I don't know how many exist. I'm sure there are a lot. But I did really enjoy going to this one alley. I just kind of stopped into just because I could, and I was surprised to see how much there was back there. And there's like this little food joint, and there's this guy standing in the window looking outside, eating a burger and talking about how there's a solution to everything. I was like, what? All right, enjoy your burger, dude.
Yeah, I was just walking through the kind of favela near my apartment, and there was a guy named Coach Fred who was sparring with a robot training dummy, and I jumped in and fought the dummy, and he's like, hey, you wanna do some underground fights? And sure, why not? And that's just turns into a whole optional quest line if you want to do it. So it's pretty wild how much is literally going on in this game if you should you choose to engage with it. Now, before we wrap, they just delayed it 2 more months. Of course, it's out in November, so they've got roughly 4 to almost 5 months left. Is there anything that you saw that still you think needs work? Let's try to kind of ground people a little bit, because I definitely noticed a couple things.
There are certainly a lot of exciting things here. I think one thing we both agree on is how the vehicles control. Sometimes I felt like when I was driving, so you get to drive around, right? And I felt like I was like taking turns really harshly when I didn't need to, or like sometimes it was like overcorrecting for me, and it just felt a little clunky, but it wasn't bad. There's also fast travel, by the way, just so y'all know, you can fast travel. So if you don't want to drive around, you can do that too. I'm also really curious to see how the gunplay actually works. One thing that I didn't get to do was actually engage in a lot of combat, which is surprising, despite me not going through the main quest. I did get in some like skirmishes on the street with gangs and like some other like side mission stuff, but it didn't. I guess it's also on me for not having engaged a little bit more, but also like level restrictions. So I am curious to see how that gets polished up a little bit as well, because some of like the entry level guns felt just, I don't know, like standard, which is fine. I mean, it's not a shooter, so it's okay. But
I pumped a lot of my points into stealth and hacking. I love doing those things in a game when I'm given the chance to, where I can sort of think my way around a situation rather than engage in direct gunplay. Because for me, there are a million first-person shooters, so if you're going to give me some other options, I'd love to take them. And for all those points I invested in those skills and perks, in the first 4 hours, I really didn't get a chance to use any of them. And again, I'm not really criticizing the game per se, more just the 4-hour time limit that we had. So I guess the thing to maybe pass along to people is be patient, because this is clearly, I think you and I very much agree, this is an enormous game. Like, I couldn't even pretend to put a number on it, but I mean, 40 hours, it would probably be an absolute minimum based on the fact that we just did 10% of that and saw nothing. So there is going to be so much to this game that I wanted to hack. I wanted to, really subvert the environment and the enemies, and I didn't get a chance to do that. But I'm with you. Yeah, the vehicles, and then I thought some of the inventory management was a little unintuitive as well.
Yeah, the menus are pretty dense. There's a lot to keep track of there, but I think for me it was mostly okay. I think just as long as some of the vehicle stuff gets a little bit tuned. And I know there are some things, specifically some features that were missing from our demo, like crafting, like we didn't get to check that out yet.
Right.
So I think there's just like a lot they're still working on, and I'm curious to see how it all pans out. Like you said, we just like scratched the surface of this game. Like, I'm very surprised by how far we didn't get. But at the same time, we look back at The Witcher, right? That game was huge. Like, The Witcher 3 is massive. So I'm expecting something like that for this.
And so we only scratched the surface of the game, and in this conversation, we only scratched the surface of the longer pieces that you and I each wrote separately for IGN.com. So please go to IGN.com. I wrote a couple thousand words. You wrote a huge piece too. So there's a lot of Cyberpunk to chew on IGN right now, should you want to dive in a bit. Miranda, thank you so much. For more on everything Cyberpunk 2077, and there is clearly a lot, keep it tuned right here to IGN.
We're happy to present IGN's Summer of Gaming, featuring the latest and greatest in game reveals, news, trailers, next-gen coverage, and more. Our month-long event features our first ever series of IGN Expos, where you'll get first looks at world premiere game trailers, exclusive game demos, and interviews you won't find anywhere else. IGN's Summer of Gaming, only on IGN and IGN One on Samsung TV Plus.